recording this webinar. Welcome. And so this is the fourth in a series of stewardship webinars that we are running in the diocese. This one focuses particularly on the issue of creating community and formation around stewardship. We're going to talk both about the stewardship campaigns that happen most likely in many congregations in the fall, and then we're also going to talk about year-round ways that we can keep the stewardship conversation alive. So as we move into this webinar, I have four objectives for us. We're going to learn how to give space for meaningful formation in stewardship practices and talk about the theology of money. We're going to talk about some common best practices and tools in storytelling and themes of generosity. We're going to review the TENS materials. TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, is a partner with the diocese, and they have released free materials for your use. And I'll show you how to access those and review a little bit about how the small group process can be used to form some intentional community this year. And then we're going to talk about some year-round stewardship options. So if you were a part of my last session where we looked specifically at this year's fall stewardship campaign, these next couple of slides are going to be familiar to you. But I wanted to redo them for folks who hadn't yet participated or seen this content. We're up against some new and different challenges in 2020, some things that we haven't had to experience in a while in the Bay Area. And so one of those, of course, is that we are meeting in different ways. We are meeting online, virtually, in many different formats. And that is one of the challenges that we will encounter as we roll through our stewardship campaigns this year and try to create strong programs. There's also economic fallout. We're hearing about it every day in the news. We're hearing about it in our churches. Fortunately, many of our churches are continuing to be able to pay their pledges and members are able to participate, but we understand that some households have been really negatively impacted by what's going on. So there are some challenges as we go into stewardship this year. And we're a little uncertain of what 2021 will bring. I keep joking and saying I'm waiting for the frogs plague to show up any day, because that one we haven't had yet. But I shouldn't probably joke about it because it might happen. So let's talk a little bit about how we talk about money. And this is sort of about our theology and also our Christian practice. How do we talk about money when there is economic fallout? And one of the things that I want to stress, and I do when we talk about stewardship, is that stewardship is not about shame, guilt, and duty. It is a joy, it's a gift, it's part of our call as Christians participating in community. And so we shouldn't feel or project any kind of shame when we talk about people's giving. And if a household feels like it needs to reduce its pledge this year because things have happened in their economic lives or in other parts of their world, that's just fine. Every gift matters. We should remember that not every household is encountering the pandemic and the fallout from it in the same way. So while some households may be negatively impacted, others are not. In fact, some households have reduced expenses because they're not going out anymore, and they may have more to give. You never know. So this year's stewardship campaigns may give us a window into how people are responding, and we should be adaptable and ready. Every conversation about money and every conversation about pledges is a pastoral one. So we talk a lot about money and we use it to communicate all kinds of things. Our hopes, our dreams, our fears, our children's education, our retirement plans, our medical issues. Money is kind of wrapped up in all of that. And so when we are talking to each other as sisters and brothers about money and pledges, we're having pastoral conversations, not just financial ones. Also, we remember that we've been in bad places before, even recently in the Bay Area, where we struggled through the Great Recession. And we must remember, as people of hope, as Christians hopefully are, that we have recovered in the past and we will again. I'd like to talk just briefly about how we talk about stewardship if your congregation is facing cuts in program, staff, or budget, other areas. So this is going to come up over and over again as we talk today. Keep our conversations about money and stewardship focused on our mission. Our mission is why we do what we do. It's why we give the money that we give to our churches. It's why we exist as churches, doing the mission, the work in our neighborhoods, the reason for us coming together. So keep our focus on that. And remind folks that even though the doors of the church are closed, the church is open and has been open and providing services to our community. Those needs don't go away. Our neighbors still need us. Remind people that perhaps you have applied and received SBA payroll protection plan loan. If you did, that shows a good faith and goodwill effort on the part of the church, that we have been stewarding our responsibility and our budget well. We have been trying to apply for the funds necessary. That also goes for diocesan relief, if you've applied for any. Remind people that there are systems that help, that you as leaders of the congregation are stewarding our budgets well and taking advantage of the programs that are there. It shows our fiscal responsibility. And also remember that some of our members may be able to make extraordinary gifts right now. If you've been holding off asking someone to help you out of a budget shortfall because you've been thinking that you'll use them for a capital campaign in a couple of years or whatever, this may be the time to ask them for their big gift. There are people out there who have these big gifts to give and they are waiting. You will never know unless you ask. And as we talk about times of uncertainty, let's remember again that we Christians have been in uncertain times before. Since our very beginning until now, we have been threatened by forces external and internal, and we know how to get through uncertainty. We get through it by our faith, by our hope, by our prayer, by our love for each other. And those aren't just words, those are real actions. So let's remember that we know as a community how to deal with uncertainty. Being together and working through this together is what matters most. I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we create some space in small groups and create the space for these conversations that are difficult. And then I'll stop and ask for any questions and we can share with each other. So how do we talk about difficult topics and how do we bring people together? Creating a safe place is a really important job in small group work or in pastoral work in general. We must nurture all voices, but keep any one of them from dominating the conversation. And allow silence, allow time for people to sit with a thought before they speak. Those introverts among us sometimes take time to form our words and process things, so give space for folks to talk. Keep things positive. That's not to say everything is just fine and you're dismissive of people who are bringing concerns or difficult moments. But it is about keeping things focused on what's possible, what our vision is, what our mission is. Keep things moving in a forward direction. Train our small group leaders if we're going to engage in small group formation. Train your small group leaders or conversation partners on facilitation skills. And we're going to go through a couple of those later today, and you can use these slides to do that work. I'm guessing that many of you have been in or done small groups before. If you're good Episcopalians, it happens to us all. But if you haven't, I have some tips, or if you want a refresher, we'll go through some of those. Remember that leaders of small groups and anything in church you don't have to have all the answers. I don't know. I'll check on that for you. I'll get back to you. That's a good question. Let me check in with some folks. These are perfectly acceptable ways to answer questions that you don't know. Don't make things up. Don't worry about having all the answers, and don't feel that anxiety. When we don't know, it's fine to say so and to get people connected with the resources where they can get the information that they need. Some norms that are common in small groups when we form intentional, beautiful community about difficult things or about our money and our theology of money. Some common norms, so we speak for ourselves. I can't be in your shoes. I can't speak for you. I can't say many people are saying, because I am not in touch with many people. I can only speak for me, and I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and that's what I can communicate, my experience. So encourage people to adopt that norm. Try not to speak for people who aren't there, or for experiences that aren't theirs. Make sure everybody gets a chance to speak, however. I know that many different groups handle this in different ways, from the speaking stick to the invitation to a good facilitator, just kind of helping, keeping things moving, noticing if somebody's speaking for a third time, maybe it's time to coax someone into the conversation who hasn't yet spoken. So this is really important. Help people understand that as a norm. When we are talking, especially when we're sharing deeply, and small groups and difficult conversations are places where vulnerabilities and personal experiences often come up. So we don't respond or comment to another person's sharing unless that has been specifically invited. So that's to say, we don't jump in and say, I know just what you're feeling, or try to problem solve for them if they've brought up something different. Let them have their moment. You had yours, or will have yours. That commenting doesn't always help us in the formation of vulnerable small groups. Know, respect, and maintain your congregation's safe church guidelines. So that's about how you meet, where you meet, in what kind of room you meet, how many people and what ages they are. Know what your own community's safe church guidelines are. Those are trainings that we offer at the diocese to help you negotiate and navigate that. And as church leaders, if you've led small groups or served on vestries or bishops' committees, you know these policies exist. Keep the content of your conversations private, but do share the lessons and the insights. So one of the questions that often come up in small groups is this: can we talk about this outside the small group? We just learned something great tonight. And yes, you can talk about what you've learned, just maybe not who shared it or what their experiences were. Those stay within a group, but the great thing that you've achieved together, you should talk about that. You should share that work, because it's been beautiful and it's been a group process. So where it's appropriate, keep things in the group where it's safe to do so, and keep the content private. Keep the learnings out in public so that other people can benefit from it. We want to listen actively, practice empathy, and don't be rushed when we're doing small group work, because it's delicate, it's vulnerable, and it's beautiful. That's a lot about small groups and difficult conversations. And I wonder, given your body of experience, if you have questions or things you might add. This is the group feedback part of this section. If you have things that you would add into this list of norms, or if you have experiences or questions about running safe and vulnerable small groups. I've lost my little thing to read the chat. Are there any questions? You guys are good.
Yes.
Yes, let's hear it.
I was wondering if either your experience or that of the group is that it's good to go over basically a list like this of norms before the group discussion. Because I know some of the ones that I've been part of, there are people who will jump in to try to problem solve, or, even after the list of norms has been discussed and everybody has agreed to abide by them.
Yeah, yeah.
But is this a good thing, just to make sure that everybody's all on the same page about what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, I always think in a recurring small group where you've taken the time to establish norms, that it's a good practice to review them. And it doesn't have to be like an hour-long conversation. It's really quickly, or you can even post them if they've been written down, or share them again. It's really important that people remember that they've enrolled in that particular process, and that we go over these. And it's the job of the facilitator to remind people of those norms when they see things getting out of hand. It's kind of like the honor code at school, right? You don't have to call someone out, but you can say, let's remember our norms and remember how we act. And let's recall these now. So it's a great way to do that. I totally recommend that, Sandy.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions about small groups on difficult topics? We're going to go in a little more detail now about small groups and how we form them, but I wanted to ask any general questions now. I see some. So Ian, thank you for your feedback. Yeah, step up, step back is a great way to self-regulate. I love that. It's a really good way to engage this question. Van is asking, would some stewardship conversations start in small group settings and then move to one-on-ones? So we'll talk a little bit about that. I think if you have the opportunity this year in your stewardship campaigns to do one-on-one conversations, peer-to-peer, one-on-one, intimate, quiet conversation is always a great way to run a stewardship campaign. It is close, it's clear, and it's a beautiful experience of asking people to enroll in giving. I think if you do not have the number of people on your committee to be able to spread that work out enough and have a whole lot of one-on-one conversations, then you may need to do that in small group process. We'll talk about both of those as we tease through this. But I definitely think that we're going to go through a kind of a lengthy section later on actually doing the ask. And so how we invite people to make their stewardship ask is really important. One-on-one is always best. I favor it, but it doesn't always work out that way. And so I'm trying to present both options of small group and one-on-one. Anne asks if confidentiality is a small group norm that we might adopt. And I think, Anne, yes, that word in particular is what I was trying to get at when I said keep the content of the conversations in the group, but share the lessons. Confidentiality sometimes gets some people hung up on, can they share anything? Can they talk about it? It feels like a legal term to some people. So I tend not to use it, but I think it equates to the same thing. But the trick then is that I think we do want people to share insights that come out of their small group. If they can come out of a small group having learned something about themselves or about the church or the mission, and they want to share it with people, they should feel free to do that and not hindered by sort of confidentiality that sometimes makes us feel like we have to hold that kind of stuff in. So that's why I used the phrase that I do about sharing the lessons and keeping the content private. But that's another way to think about it, I think. And thank you for your suggestion. All right, friends, I'm going to move on. So I want to do, whoops, I'm moving on too quickly. I want to do a quick review of what the TENS resources are, and then we're going to go a little deeper into the small group process. So TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, provides a complete pledge campaign ready to download. Many congregations are using it, and some are, it's great, and some use it every year, some use it just every once in a while. It's there for us. And the diocese pays a membership so that you can get those resources for free. They provide many things in a full pledge campaign, from helping you create the materials, to writing sample letters, to doing weekly reflections that help in the October and November Sundays, help you make a theological stewardship approach to the readings that you've heard that day, and also ongoing training, teaching, and coaching. So TENS provides some great resources on creating small groups and virtual small groups at that. So why do we do stewardship in small groups, and why are we recommending that this year? As we approach this very interesting stewardship pledge campaign season, and we've been doing all of this virtual stuff for several months, we're going to be missing some of the things that we normally do in our stewardship campaigns in the fall. The ability to be gathered together and share information is going to have to be different. We're going to have to do that virtually. We're going to have to do that through email. We have to use the old-fashioned phone to get people the information that they need. Many congregations also do testimonials or minutes for mission, they like to call them, at the offertory or at the announcement time or just before the peace, whenever it happens in liturgy. So that is a time often that we rely on having access to during our pledge campaigns, which this year it will be different. And we need to think through how we do that. So I'm recommending that we use our small groups and create some very intentional small groups to create theologically formed communities on stewardship this year. We're going to talk more deeply about that in the next couple of slides. So we recommend that you do a minimum of 3 small group meetings in your pledge campaign this year. That you do a kickoff meeting, and we'll talk more in depth about that in a minute. That we do a Bible study as one of them, picking a theme on generosity and abundance from Scripture. And that we do something that gets us thinking about mission, vision, future possibilities, some kind of an exercise, and we'll run through those in a minute. Who should lead these small groups? So you'll want to convene and train a group of trainers in a way that can run these small groups. They should be committed. They should be ready to make their own pledge or have already made their own pledge. They should know why you're raising money, so know the case for giving and believe in it. They should know the budget of the church and be able to answer some questions about it. And if they can't, they should be able to point people in the direction of where they can get answers. They should be good listeners and facilitators. Small groups are about vulnerability and mutual support. So we want to be able to encourage people to lead them who are good listeners. People who can run the technology. So you're doing these virtually. Your small group leaders should be able to convene Zoom or Google Hangout or Facebook Live or whatever you're using for your platform. And before we say yes, and before people say yes to joining a committee or to convening small groups, please make sure that they have the time to do about 3 meetings at least. And I say that intentionally this year because we are all a little bit more overscheduled than we have ever been, because the fusion and confusion of our lives in these little windows that we're looking into on our laptops or devices. It's such an interesting time, and we're doing our work and our studying and our socializing and our churching and our friending and everything we're doing online, and we're doing it all gets mixed up together. So people have a little bit less time, same hours in the day, but we're trying to do more with them. How many small groups do you need? So I think that a group size that makes sense is somewhere between 6 and 12. If you have too few, the conversation can feel a little pushed, or people can feel like a little like burdened, that they have to do too much work. More than 12, and you start to get to a place where there isn't enough time for everyone to be able to speak. You want everybody to be able to speak if they can. So if you just don't have enough small group leaders and you need to have larger groups, that's the case. And so roll with it. But I like between 6 and 12 if you can. How do you convene these small groups? So this is a question that's come up as we've talked about these small groups forming in congregations. And so I thought I would help us tease through, and maybe you'll have some ideas later on things that work in your congregations. But we can do it randomly, take the directory and divide it up. I think that using existing small groups makes a lot of sense. Those people already know each other. They're already in some sort of process together. And so if you have a group of knitters or Bible or book studiers or gardeners or parents that are meeting and regularly talking in small group about their topics, suggest perhaps that they do some of these stewardship talks as well, and train them and give them the resources. These are already formed groups, so it's kind of an easy win for small group processes. You can also create tools and allow people to sign on to their own. We suggest that you use the weekly reflections that TENS offers, or if you're using a different kind of way of approaching your stewardship this year, find a way that these topics of stewardship can be tied into our shared experience of worship and liturgy. So those are some broad questions. I'm going to go into now the specific 3 meetings that I'm talking about, and then I'll stop and I will ask for any questions. So kickoff is a great time to begin your small group work. Many congregations are planning on hosting a virtual coffee hour on their kickoff Sunday, where they will share their materials and get the hype built and talk about what they're doing. You can share your testimonials at that, or they can be pre-recorded or pre-arranged. Walk through the materials that you're sending to people or giving them. So if that's a budget or a narrative budget or a colored trifold brochure, the things that you use to talk about why you raise money in your community, this is a good time to hand that out or to send it out in email. At that virtual coffee hour, if you have these small groups ready to form, it is totally appropriate to take some time and do breakout rooms. If you don't know how to use breakout rooms in Zoom, we can talk about that, but it's a great way that you can be in a big meeting like this and then have some small groups that form within the context of that large meeting and have their own meeting and then kind of come back together in one room. It works really well. If you don't know how to run that on Zoom, if that's something you haven't done yet, I want to let you know that the diocese has a tech chaplain. So the Office for Congregational Development, that's Canon Abbott's work, she has retained a consultant who we're calling a tech chaplain, who will work with every congregation that wants it and give them the assistance they need to bring their technology up to speed, to teach them how to use the tools that they have or need to have, and we'll walk through the various things. And that's from setting up your websites and e-newsletters, to your email, to troubleshooting your broadband or your technology, your lighting, your camera, your sound. They will work with you on all that, and it's absolutely free for all DioCal congregations. So if you need to access that, Abbott is the person that you should email, and she will get you connected to that. That small group, that first small group, is a great way for people to get to know each other. People may already know each other because it's a church, but not everybody may know all the stories, like how long they've been there, or what is it that made this place feel special? Why do you keep coming back? The convener can use this time, of course, to go over those norms, as we talked about earlier, and to set the stage for how small group conversations will run. Again, that convener should make certain that everybody has access to the materials and be able to answer some questions. The second small group we're recommending, and I see some questions coming in. I'm going to stop after I finish talking about the third group. We were recommending that the second small group be perhaps a Bible study. And you may have seen this slide before because I've been talking about it, but I just putting it up briefly now. If you've never done a sort of Lectio Divina or a sort of a group Bible study, this is one process. You can Google it and find out millions more processes for leading Bible studies in small groups. We recommend it. And the next slide is going to give you a whole bunch of passages that you can use. You're going to get these slides, so you don't have to take notes for this right now. But these are great jumping off places to have good conversation about stewardship in small group. The third meeting is about appreciative inquiry. And again, it's that let's look at the positive. Let's look at what's possible, what's exciting, and what we're doing in our congregation that makes us really excited. I see we have some questions. I'm going to look at them now, and then I will ask you all for yours. So Ian's curious about having 3 meetings. So Ian, do you want to say how it worked? Before you said that last year you did all 3 parts, but in one big meeting. Do you want to talk about why that worked or how it was challenging?
Yeah, let me see if I can do it quickly. The context was a congregation, a larger congregation. It had been in turmoil and had blown up the year before, where lots of people left on either side. And so when we came together, the rector had left and the priest in charge, or the associate became priest in charge, I became associate. So that was the context that we were walking into a fall campaign after a huge blow up, where the previous year, our budget was cut in half, just is the short version of this. And so we didn't quite know what we were going to face. And we were still very much, the congregation was healing and didn't know where it was at. So we set up a process, or I should say my priest in charge set up the process of small group meetings. And we had somewhere, I don't remember the number, somewhere between 20 and 25 meetings over the fall. And her and I went to every single one of them, except for the week I had vacation. So yeah, we devoted a ton of time. But we did the 3 parts that you're recommending. And most of it we centered around Lectio Divina, around scripture. We chose a Lazarus story for obvious reasons. It enabled us to really talk about what happened and hopes and fears and where we were going. And the process was very much about coalescing and connecting and healing the parish, where stewardship was going to be asked. Materials prior to going into that meeting, I took our budget, I created a ministry-focused budget where people could really see what ministries were being funded and what part of the budget went into them. And so that was all set up in a booklet that they got handed and was just available throughout the parish throughout fall. But it really worked. People started listening to each other. They started sharing their faith. They started connecting with each other.
Yay.
So it worked really well for the people that we managed to get to come. It worked really well. So the question comes, we asked everybody to come to one evening.
Yeah.
And we spent 3 hours. We had dessert or dinner and really kind of had an evening with folks. And so the time commitment was on the clergy, not the people. And so that's why I'm asking, like, breaking it into 3 different sections.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I could get people to come to 3 different meetings.
Yeah, I hear that. It's a sell, right? It's a hard sell. We're already busy. Evenings and weekends are precious. And I think it's a great point. So I love that you were able to do all 3 parts in one big thing. So we're not going to be getting together for coffee and dessert this year, probably. And these things are happening online. And one of the things that I have noted in now being a 6-month expert on Zoom is that my attention span is about 60 to 90 minutes, right? After that, it's really diminishing returns for me. And that's not because I may not be interested or love the people that I'm with, but it's just a lot, right? It's a lot of being on cam and screen and all that. So I hear that 3 meetings may be too many, but 1 meeting may not be enough. If you can combine this work into a couple, one at the beginning and one at the end, and do, use your other Zoom coffee hours or other ways to talk about stewardship, I think that's fine. I think ideally the 3, the sort of beginning, middle, and end, are nice because they help people follow the trajectory of a pledge campaign. I also understand that, if it's not going to work for your community, it's not going to work. So something is better than nothing. Some small group process is better than none. Your community better than I. And so adapt these resources. And I think, Ian, your question may help Anne, and her question, which was 3 rounds, sounds like a lot to her as well. And so there are ways to combine this. I'm just saying that if your congregation has the bandwidth and the time and the volunteers to be able to run 3 groups, it would be great. And I think it'll accomplish a lot because people will be not just turn in their pledge cards, right? I mean, that is one of the amazing goals of a pledge campaign, but to be informed and formed about why they make their pledges and how they do that work and why it matters, and form some kind of, as you said, Ian, sort of a restorative community that was talking again to each other. If you can encounter difficult topics like money together, you can do lots together as a community. So I thank you for those suggestions and those ideas. And thanks for sharing your experience. Are there other questions about small groups for stewardship? I don't see any hands up. I don't see any more questions. Mary, you saw that I typed in Abbott's address, her email address. Please give her a ring or give her a call if you want to take advantage of the tech chaplain or anything else. So finally, in that 3rd small group, we're going to talk now about making the ask, which I should really call making the invitation, extending the invite. Because you're not asking people for money, you're asking people to make a pledge to a campaign. which is 6 of one, half dozen of the other, perhaps, but it's nuanced. So we're recommending that that last small group this year be the one in which the convener asks people to make their pledge. So this is the peer-to-peer piece that Van was talking about earlier. And if we can do it in a small group, that's great. If it's one-on-one, also great. This isn't to say that the convener or anyone in the small group needs to know how much is being asked of a person or what they gave last year or what their pledge this year will be. This isn't about a dollar amount. This is about, will you join me? Have I answered your questions? Do you want to know anything else about stewardship? Do you understand? Are you excited about where we're going as a church? So that's what this is about. When you are asking for a gift, I want to go through a few ideas here from a fundraiser for more than 20 years. These are some of the things that I still think about when I go into talking with Christians about their money. So whether we're asking for a gift for the pledge or any other reason in church, let's remember that it is not easy. It's not easy to talk about money. It's not easy to ask people for money, but it doesn't have to be terrifying or impossible. But I will tell you, as a veteran fundraiser, that my palms still sweat when I am asking someone for money. It never goes away, right? Because it's a big deal. Focus on the mission. We've said this before, and we'll say it a few more times today. You are doing good work. Your church is doing good work. Be bold and audacious in that. This is a spirit-led, prayer-led process. Help people understand that they're contributing to that. Rely on your relationship. So look for people's, are they looking threatened? Are they looking warm and receptive? And that will guide you. Listen more than speak when asking people to inviting people to participate in a campaign. And be clear about the need. It always comes back to the mission, always comes back to the need for why we raise money. I've run through a couple of scenarios that we could use, and you can take these and adapt them. So 4 different sorts of invitations that we often extend at Pledge Campaign. The first is we're asking people to just, join. We're doing this work. We've done it last year. Will you join me in supporting this year? And this is, the first one is one script that you could possibly use. You could imagine yourself saying that. The second one is if you are asking people to give more this year than they did last year. So this often happens at our stewardship. Our budgets go up and we say, please make a gift to your stewardship campaign. And if you can do more, please do it. So I give you one piece of language there that you could use to ask somebody to make a stretch gift for the campaign this year. So I increased my giving, if in fact you have. We increased our giving this year because this really matters to us. We want to see our congregation grow. Can you join me in making a stretch gift this year? Again, the answer is between them and the pledge secretary, or them and the treasurer, them and their pledge card, them and God. So you're not saying, and how much is it? You're not looking over their shoulder. You're asking them to be prayerful and make that invitation. The next one is when you realize as the invitor that you need to, that somebody has fallen on different times and the ask may be different this year than it was last year. And so I go through this because it happens all the time in our campaigns. And we don't want to be fearful about the way we ask someone who we know has had a hard year to still be able to participate in stewardship this year. So I give you this one, we know that it's been a tough year for you, but still I'm asking you to make a pledge contribution for the mission this year, no matter the amount. Make them feel at ease. It doesn't matter what the amount is. What matters is that they participate in the pledge campaign. And then finally, the one that we often wonder about is how do you get someone who's never pledged before to pledge? How do you tell them that Episcopalians do their budgets in this way and we pledge for the next year? And it may be new learning for some people. So I give you some copy there that you could use and you could think about using. And it's all about answering questions. What questions about our community do you have? How are we governed? Do you wonder about that? How do we form our budgets? How do we make our decisions? How do we raise our money? Those are questions that they may not ask because they're not ready to ask or don't know to ask them, and you can help them ask and get comfortable with. So what questions can I answer for you about why we raise money or how you can join us? Somebody who's new to your church and has never pledged before, this may be a really welcoming conversation. They may want to pledge, but don't know how. And that feels funny to us who do it year after year, but it's true. Some people are wondering how they can participate. Finally, a say this, don't say this, compare and contrast. So just some quick points on things that we want to add into our invitations as we talk about money. We're funding the whole mission of the church. So when somebody says, well, I really only care about the choir, can my gift go to the choir? We fund the whole mission. Don't tell them that they can designate their gift for a specific ministry. Say things like, your gift has impact. It means a lot to us. It changes our community. It benefits our mission. Don't talk about the utility bills or the office supplies or the things that kind of are not important. They're necessary to run a church, but they're not why we are excited about it. So don't say your gift keeps the lights on. When we talk about the biggest line item in our budget, which is often our clergy salaries, remind people that we pay our staff a living wage. We give them benefits. We pay our pension so that they can raise their families with dignity and retire in dignity. That's a really important value that we have. Don't remind them that priests don't make a whole lot of money and that they have big expenses. Remind them that we are doing the best that we can and our priests work really hard. Remind people that every gift matters. Don't force giving on people. Don't squeeze them for a gift. Invite them into the process of giving. Proportional giving is one of those things that we talk about in our stewardship campaigns. It's about that tithe that we're always stretching for. And if 10% is a lot for some households, then what does 1% or 2% or 5% look like? Give a proportion of your income. It often helps us make a decision about how much we should give. Can I see myself giving 7% to the church this year? And then you can make that math easily. Many pledge cards can do that math on the back of them. So, they can have the table of your income and what the weekly or monthly breakdown by proportional giving would be. Don't say I give for the benefit, the tax deduction, right? That's not why we're doing this. We're doing it because it's a gift and a joy. And one question that may come up, because it does, what's this assessment that we're paying for? And remind people that assessment supports our other sister churches, and their assessment supports our church as well. When we fall on hard times, if we should, there will be help from our neighbors because of the assessment. It's not a tax. It's not meant to be a tax, and it's not seen like that. It's a gift to our community and how we help each other be Christians in our communities. Are there any questions specifically, or maybe experiences you want to share, or questions you have about making the invitation to join stewardship? Is that something that you're all comfortable doing? Is that something that you plan on doing this year? How will you, do these resources help? Are there things you'd like to go over more? We can talk about any of them. We can tease out some scenarios. Yeah, Sandy, you have a question.
Well, I just wanted to put a comment in that I have always been very uncomfortable asking anybody for anything, let alone for money. And, you know, I have found these webinars to, you know, to really be inspiring. And I very much appreciate the resources. TENS looks like it's going to be something that my church will be using this year. And I could see myself as a leader of one of, you know, of a small group and working on basically a script for both getting through however many of the small meetings we wind up having, as well as, you know, really sitting down and thinking seriously about the script for the invitation to pledge.
Mhm.
Because I know when I have been on the receiving end of a stewardship drive, it's made me very uncomfortable to have somebody come and ask me for money, especially, you know, during the times when I didn't have very much of it.
Sure.
And it's just a really, it's a difficult thing for me, but I think that given sufficient preparation, I'm at least willing to give it a shot.
Well, thanks for having the courage to say that, Sandy. As I said, it makes me nervous every time I do it too. And that doesn't go away. It's true. Asking for anything, particularly sharing our money, is a difficult discipline. So your teaching, your idea about developing a script is really good, and I want to share with you, as someone who sends the bishop out to do major gift asks all the time. I sit down with him before he does it, and we go through the script, right? This is our bishop. You know, he can talk about any topic for any length of time about anything with anyone. But he wants a script because money is a thing it's hard for him to talk about too. So developing your script, knowing, can help you feel confident and ready to do that invitation. And so don't downplay it. Do develop a script, and it's comfortable. You can also, especially within Christian community, when you're asking each other for a gift, you can say, this makes me really nervous, but I love you and I see you every Sunday, or, you know, we've been going to church together for years. I'm going to do this. And you know that you have someone in front of you who is ready to accept you. That should feel good too, even when you're asking them to give something of themselves. So just remember that they're human too, and that, as you said, Sandy, you're anxious when somebody asks you for money, so they're maybe just as nervous about this conversation as you are. The final thing that I want to say about making the invitation, extending the invitation, is that you have the whole weight, not as a burden, but as a supportive system. You have all of the support of your church behind you when you do this. Because I'm not asking to fund Davy, right? Give me your money to do something with it, right? I am saying the church needs it, the mission needs it, this is what we're doing with it. You've seen all the examples of how we are responsibly stewarding your gift this year. We're going to do some great things. This is what we need your money for. So really inviting people into the mission. And you should feel strong about that, bold about that, good about that, because it's not just you alone, right? You're asking for all of the members and all of the people that your church benefits, the people it feeds, the people it teaches, the people who wear the clothes that you collect and give away. What all of the things that your mission does is sitting in you, with you, when you are extending that invitation to people. And that's not to make you feel nervous, like the stakes are super high. It's there to make you feel bold, because you're doing something that is really important work. Remember that. These resources are jumping off places. If you ever, and I extend this invitation truthfully, if you want to walk through your pitch with me, or have me review your case for giving or your materials, I do that for congregations. I love to do that. I can make some edits or make some suggestions. Jane and I right now are doing the ones for Holy Innocents, and we're making suggestions back and forth for each other about our materials. It's the way stewardship works. I am so happy to do that work, and so I'll walk through your script with you. I'll even test it out with you if you like. So please, this is what the diocese is here for. Are there any other questions about extending the invitation before we move into sort of year-round formation on stewardship? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on.
Davey?
Yes, yes. Oh, hey, Ron.
Sorry, I totally respect what you said about yourself and what about Bishop Mark, and what I hear what Sandy just said. But I'd also like to comment that I think sometimes we can get overly nervous about this point when we are making an ask. As you know, Davey, I for some reason, I'm sure I'm just strange. I have never had a problem asking for money. In fact, I kind of look forward to it. I think that the issue is that when all of us, you know how passionate I am about the work of the church in the community. And I'm going to assume that there's some level of that, a lot of that actually around this Zoom table here. So when stewardship is only one way of inviting people to participate in the community, there's lots of, as you know, there's lots of other ways as well. And so when we're all passionate about something and the work that organization, that institution is doing, and we all talk about that and share what it is that drives us, that makes us want to be a part of this so much. When it comes to the issue of money, it can be also just a natural sense of this is another way that we're all contributing to this community, and we do it together. And I really don't think, I think we make too much of the fact that people are going to withdraw, or that they're going to, I think people expect to be asked to participate in that way. And we should at the same time, it's healthy to plan, to do some planning, but it's also, I just want to not focus too much on the sweaty palms and that stuff, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point too. Stewardship for many of us is no surprise, right? The pledge campaign comes around every year. It may not be a surprise. We may know who's on the stewardship committee, and when we see them calling or see them approaching us in the parish hall, we may know the conversation that's about to happen. It's fine. In fact, last year I was asking someone for their gift, and as I approached them to say good morning, great to see you, they said yes. We turned in our pledge form. All right, got it, great. You know why I'm here, but it was also to say hi. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a surprise, and it doesn't have to be difficult. There's some of us who love asking for money. It's also not everybody's favorite thing. Thanks, Ron, for sharing your experience. All right, let's move into how we can keep this conversation going year round. And this goes back to Ron's point about pledge campaigns and budgets and raising money shouldn't be a surprise to us because our churches always need money. Let's remember that Jesus spent 40% of his parables, 40% of his teaching, talking about money and possessions, right? So that's our chief leader, our prophet, and he spent a lot of time with us on these topics of money and possessions. It's because it keeps coming up in our lives, sometimes as a sticking point, sometimes as a blessing, sometimes as a hindrance. So as we have to work that out between us and our money and God. But it's important enough that we do talk about it a lot, and there are lots of opportunities to talk about it year round, so that when the pledge drive comes, it's not a shock. Why are we disrupting everything? Well, we've been hearing about money all year long. Doesn't mean that every sermon has to be give, give, give. It means that there are opportunities to talk about our stewardship, the blessing of giving all year long. So once these small groups have formed, let's say you want to keep some of them going, and they might meet episodically throughout the year and dwell on this. Maybe they've created some intentional, beautiful community formation around stewardship. So I'm going to talk to you about how to do a money autobiography, how to do some storytelling, how to use some common things in our church experience, like the baptismal covenant and the liturgical calendar, as places, jumping off places for campaigns and for stewardship conversations. I also want to remind us all that a mid-year pledge campaign review is a really important thing. And if you do no other year-round stewardship effort, you should, at some point in the middle of the year, whatever you determine that to be, at least send out a letter saying, thanking everyone and reminding people what their gifts have done, what their gifts need to continue doing, how things are running. If this is a time you want to check up on the budget, yeah, we're doing okay, but it's the summer cash flow crunch. It's a good time to do that. If you can do it in a Zoom or a small group meeting, even better, because then you can communicate about it and ask questions about it. But it's really important, if you do nothing else around year-round stewardship, to do at least a mid-year check-in. And that's not just sending a pledge statement saying you're caught up or you're behind. It's about, this is what we're doing with your money, and this is why this is really important to you. A money autobiography, you can have this tool. I'll send you these slides. But these lead us deep into conversation with each other in a small group that's created some kind of vulnerability and support for each other. These are really deep questions that talk about our own relationship with money, church, and God. We get lessons about our money from the way we were raised, from how our family treated money, from how our family felt about its position. Did we feel rich or poor? Did we compare ourselves with others? Were we doing all right? We have happy and unhappy memories about money. I remember always the story of my father being laid off, and that moment of coming home and hearing that story about the dinner table and the worry about that. That's an unhappy memory about money that I carry with me. And so it informs in some way what I think about employment and money and ability to give, right? So those deep childhood stories are really important and formational. When we talk about them as a part of our spiritual journey with each other, we can share and learn more about how we make stewardship and giving decisions. I love this question about how do you deal with the knowledge that 2/3 of the world is poor, and that most of the world's population is poorer than we are in the United States. you know, we wake up every day and we do our jobs and we raise our families and we go to bed, and we forget about the fact often that we have so much more, because we are sometimes, often even, myself included, worried about what we don't have or worried about keeping what we have. So these questions help us think about those moments and those relationships with each other. It's a really great small group tool. Storytelling is a really important part of stewardship, and we do it when we do those minutes for mission or those testimonials. But it's also really important in a mid-year checkup or other ways that we do some storytelling. And let's bring in some different voices, right? So I love hearing from someone who's benefiting, if it's appropriate, benefiting from one of the ministries of our church, somebody who weekly gets a bag of groceries from us, or who every once in a while might need some of our services and they access it. If they're willing to share their story, and it's a safe place to share that story, and it's an appropriate story to share, I think we love hearing how our gifts have impact in the world outside our church. If people don't want to share their own story, a client or a beneficiary of our mission, then somebody who's working on that ministry, either a volunteer or someone who's paid to do it, might come in and tell stories about what's happening in that ministry and the lives that are impacted and how that makes a difference. So consider those as places to get rich material for storytelling about stewardship and giving. And always a story from someone who's given. So we should always remember to ask people who've shared abundantly, will you talk about why you do that? Give an opportunity to them to talk about why the ministry speaks to them or what matters to them. So another tool that I give to you to use throughout the year, a way that we can think about ongoing stewardship. Every time we say the baptismal covenant on our baptism Sundays or other renewal Sundays, it reminds us of the promises that we made. And so I suggest it's a document that we can refer to all the time when we think about it, and perhaps do a small group or a teaching series around how the values that are embedded in the baptismal covenant can be stories and lessons about how we give and how we experience generosity. So I've given you a few there, and you can certainly use those and adapt them as you move into year-round stewardship. TENS provides a seasonal reflection. Every time the church season changes, TENS has a theological statement that relates either to the readings or to a summary of the readings. And so those are great times to bring together your small group or to do some large group formation around giving themes and generosity. In Advent, we are looking at our need to change and our longing for change in the world, and our gratitude for what we have received. At Christmas, we talk about the greatest gift that we received, Jesus into the world, who came to lead us and teach us. In Epiphany season, we talk about how we are Christ's body in the world. We hear all those great stories of Jesus manifesting to new groups of people and making his mission, his ministry known to people. We can talk about how we do that when we take the values of our church out into our community and how that informs us as people of faith. Lent, how do we talk out our own mortality? What does that mean? Planned giving is certainly a topic that we can encounter in Lent and think about it. Our faith, our joy of Easter It renews us. It reminds us that we are alive, and we want to share that testimonial of mission with our neighbors and our friends. And Pentecost, we always offer a couple of pieces. TENS always offers a couple of reflections in the Pentecost season to help us learn about the work that we do and engage meaningfully in it. Finally, I give you specific feast days that are great if you need a different stewardship sermon idea, or you want to interject these themes around the various feasts and fasts of the church. The liturgical calendar as the baptismal covenant is something that we all share as Episcopalians so well. And so I suggest that there are some of these ways that we could ask these questions in a sermon on these days or around these days. What is the star that guides you? How does your faith inform your giving? The presentation, when you glimpse the future of the church, what do you see? Ash Wednesday, do you still find yourself rich if you were to lose everything? On Rogation days, those spring and fall days that celebrate our harvest, remind us that we are in relationship with the earth and our stewardship and how that informs us with the greatest gift that God has given us. Ascension, how do we prepare, right? I love the image of Jesus disappearing into the clouds. What do we need to prepare for future generations? Transfiguration, if we really saw Christ in each other, how would we treat each other? How would we form our ministries? How would that inform us as people of generous, faithful giving? At All Saints, we talk about the people who have come before us and the people who will come after us in that thin place. So what are the lessons that we've learned in our life about generosity and giving? And your patronal feast is always a great time to talk about planned gifts and legacy giving, because it's very likely that your congregation has benefited from a planned gift. If you look at the names on your stained glass windows, if you look at the plaques in your wall, there have been people who have come before you who have given their devotion to your community. Your patronal feast is often a good time to celebrate that and to talk about what your legacy will be. What is your stained glass window look like in the church? These are a few ideas on keeping formation going year-round so that when it comes time to do our pledge campaigns, we're not surprised by it, but we have a deeply formed membership, folks who know why they are giving to the mission and why the mission matters to them so much. This is the end of my slideshow, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I will share these slides with you later tonight when I send them out in email. And I want to bring us back into the full group and give us all time to talk about anything that we've heard today or share other stories about year-round formation and stewardship. Any questions, any ideas, any thoughts? Is anyone considering doing some year-round stewardship? What would that look like? Carol Ann, you just shook your head. Yes, you nodded your head. Are you doing it in your church? What's it like? You're muted. Carol Ann, you're muted. We can't hear you. I can help you unmute if you want. There you go. You're unmuted. Welcome.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
We are beginning to focus more on that, and your ideas have been helpful.
Where is your community, Carol Ann? Which church are you a part of?
Church, Sausalito.
Oh, wonderful.
And three of my stewardship committee people are also watching today.
Hello, Christchurch, Sausalito. Good to have you with What other things in year-round stewardship, or any of the things that we've talked about, extending the invitation, why small group processes are good for fundraising and stewardship, anything that you'd like to go over?
Good. Your slide presentations have been terrific.
Thank you. Thank you. I put a lot of information into them, which you're not supposed to do in slide presentations, but it's because I'm going to give them to you later. I want you to be able to run through them yourselves.
I think they're especially valuable for the people who come after us.
Thank you. We'll post these. Ron, I see you've got your hand up.
Maybe I want to go back to something you said earlier about building small, we were talking about building small groups. Specifically for stewardship, can you say anything more about how would a church, let's just pick a church that's got, let's say, an ASA of 200 people. So how does the church go about putting together these? I mean, I think maybe not so much the technical mechanics, but how do you go about doing that, and how do you go about inviting in a way that people will feel a certain sense of being compelled to join and be a part of that?
I love that. Thank you. Because it's also a mechanical conversation too. We want to make sure the infrastructure is there for them. So I think it's a couple of different things. First, let's be realistic. In an ASA of 200, you're not going to get 200 people participating in small groups. It would be lovely if they all did. But let's just say, for sake of experience in the Episcopal Church, not everyone will say yes to a small group. So we're working with a number of people, and that can be a large number. I think the important thing first is to be excited about why we're doing small groups. So the formation aspect, it's more than just getting the pledge card filled out. So when we are going into this, we are doing this to inform and form some intentional community around people who know why they are generous givers, why the mission matters. So these are people who may want to go deep. If you can't do a small group, your congregation can still do stewardship, right? In the ways that you will. You'll send out your letters, your emails, you'll make the phone calls. I mean, stewardship campaigns will still happen. I'm suggesting that for the folks who can and want to do a little more deep formation, and especially in a time when we are gathered virtually, it may be meaningful for people to be able to talk about this in a small group setting. So one of the ways that I've heard, Ron, back to the mechanics, sending out a letter inviting people, this could come from the clergy or from the campaign chair, talking about why we're doing small groups this year, what's the process, and outlining it. I've seen some congregations create like a public Google Doc, so a spreadsheet, and they have just, Davey's running a small group on Thursdays at 7. Who wants to join it? And you sign yourself up for it. And that's going to take, right? Not everyone's going to sign up on the first day, and there's going to be lots of reminders. We're going to have to work that the way we work any sign up process in the Episcopal Church. It takes several asks to get there. The other one is just to assign people, right? Say like we're going through the alphabet and Davey's got, A through D, and those are the people who he's going to reach out to and say, will you join my small group? And here's how we're doing it, and see where we go. I think that there are lots of ways to do that work, but setting up the infrastructure, picking a plan, that's why we're starting now in August to do this, picking that idea and how we're going to do it, and what technology you're going to use. So are you using the Zoom platform? Are you using a different platform? Whatever you've been using to do your virtual work in church, is what you should continue to use for your pledge campaign. So pick that technology and go for it. So does that help, Ron, answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great. Mary, yes, I am going to bring us all back together in December, or if December feels too burdensome, perhaps in January. Bring us all back together to say we're going to do some real work on what worked and didn't work in stewardship this year. I would love that. So I'm going to offer some Zoom time to do that, probably a couple of sessions because we'll want to get lots of voices. And I will also do a survey of sorts and send it out to every congregation and really ask you, this isn't a parochial report, right? I'm not asking you how you did, but the lessons, what worked and what didn't and what was helpful and where do you want to go next year?
Right.
Thanks for that question, Mary.
Yeah. Well, we're doing all this work on the front end. It'd be nice to have something in conclusion.
I think every stewardship campaign feels that at this point. And then they get through the stewardship and they're like, I don't want to meet again.
Yeah.
Which also happens. So let's be clear about that. So let's give ourselves maybe the holiday to take it all off and come back renewed and ready to go. But yes, I do want to pull us all back together and ask how this has gone. And I really do, you said something else, we're doing all this work on the front end. I want to acknowledge that you're all doing really important, really hard work right now. It is a lot of work to do stewardship campaigns, even though we do them every year. It's work and it's meaningful work, and the volunteers who run this and the stewardship chairs who say yes to this, they're really special people. So thank you for doing this hard work and for engaging this work. Yeah, Ian.
Just a quick question. Can you say a little bit about, you stressed talking about mission, but can you talk about stressing belonging? That pledging as a way of kind of claiming your place in the community?
Yeah, I think that is a beautiful idea. And I usually talk about it in terms of participation in community, but I think belonging is an even deeper, more meaningful word, Ian. I think I love that. It is our way of engaging with our fellow Christians, our sisters and brothers in the aisle, in the pews, and really doing that intentional work of loving and belonging. I hesitate sometimes with the word belonging because what I don't want to say is that if you don't give, you don't belong. So we never want to say that. There are some people who will never pledge, but sometimes like to put some money in the plate when no one's looking. And there are some people who just don't have or won't give money to their church, and they give in other ways. And while I would love everyone to be a donor, I also understand that churches are made up of all of us. And so when we're using the idea of belonging, let's just be really clear that it's not paying dues, that it is absolutely about belonging, being a part of that longing community.
And that follows up with stewardship being not just money,
right,
but kind of time and talent.
Right. So, I'm a money guy. I'm focusing on getting pledge cards filled out. I also always stress that, yes, there are all the ways that we need people to give to church. We need them to donate their time and their expertise and their wisdom. We need them to invite their friends and bring their friends. And so we need them to grow the church as well. So yes, stewardship is not just about money, but I'm a money guy. So So
understanding that, have you done pledge cards where other aspects like that are part of the pledging?
yeah, Jane, not to put you on the spot, but I know that that's something that you've brought to us at Holy Innocents. Do you want to talk about that?
It's with the time and talent and just finding ways for even the teenagers and the kids to be involved in that. And it's very rich, and pastorally, it's a fantastic opportunity to engage with people and what's important to them, why they're in the church, because they really like lighting the candles, they really like polishing the brass, and we need everybody to be doing that. And it's about knitting themselves into the community.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Anne had something, and then I think Nancy has something. Thank you, Jane. That's great. Anne, you're muted. We can't hear you. Whatever brilliant thing you're saying is lost to us.
Well, you missed it. One of the things that I really love that's happened since our first session with you is we suggested, because in the virtual liturgy, that we have the offertory sentences, and that we have that moment of the offertory. And one of the things the rector's been doing, not at our suggestion, he just did it all on his own without our even telling him to, is he adds every year, I mean, every week before we all say the sentence, and then he says that offer your gift, blah, blah, blah. He has singled out one person in the parish that does something, like a woman that comes and waters the plants, or a woman who has been really helpful in helping somebody be able to work through the mechanics of getting a Medi-Cal. Or, I mean, it's just kind of those kind of special, that this is how we offer ourselves in God's service. And I think it's just been really touching and beautiful to acknowledge the gifts that people give other than money.
And that's a really beautiful practice. Gratitude is really important, and I love doing it in that really public way. We have many saints, and they do things, as you say, that are sometimes unknown to the whole congregation, sometimes invisible. And so if they're willing to be called out and thanked, I love doing that. Gratitude is a part of our generosity, isn't it?
Well, as you said, I think the first time, you can't thank people enough. That's
Thank
true.
Thank them. I want to be aware of our time. We are 3 minutes over our 90. I see Nancy has a question, and I want to make sure that you all have questions. I also want to let you go off to dinner or parenting or whatever else you have to do today. So, so Nancy.
I just wanted to say that in our parish, for several years, we've actually used other things besides money as far as your contribution to the thing, time, talent, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it makes people feel more comfortable, especially those who just may not have a lot of money, but they have time or talent to do something.
Oh, yeah.
So we're on ours already, but we're going to emphasize all of it. I loved all of your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Well, friends, thank you very much for joining this series and for being a part of today's webinar. I really appreciate it. I will send you all the video and the guide. You can watch it to your heart's content. And we will be gathering again, as I said, to sort of do a debrief. I want to make a little plug. If your congregation is a planned giving congregation, and if legacy societies are important to you, we're going to be doing some legacy society and planned giving webinars at the end of September and in October. So we'll be talking specifically about that. So that's still coming up, and talking specifically about the CARES Act and planned giving and sort of the legacy society stuff. So be looking in DioCal News and Events for those signups. If you've never started a legacy society, we're going to talk about why you might want to and how planned giving could be a thing. So be ready for that. Thank you so much, friends. I really appreciate your time. I will see you another time soon, and I look forward to it.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Thanks,
Davey.
Davey.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Davey.
Stay
Thank you.
safe.
Bye.